Hello, everyone. Welcome to Liam's Lyceum. I am your host, Liam, aka Himbar, and today I'm doing my weekly update. It's been a few weeks, actually. So, this is for the 17th of November, 2024. I did do a weekly update last week, but it was just a community post. So, a lot of people don't seem to see those. So, I'll briefly mention the 2 weeks that was an update for, the 8 books I finished there, and then I'll go into the 4 books I actually finished this last week. So, for last, 3 and 2 weeks ago, I finished The Steerswoman by Rosemary Kirsten, The Ship of Fools by Sebastian Brandt, Shadow Spawn by Andrew J. Offit, The Path of Lightning by Warren Walker, which actually I have a review for up already, A Study in Scarlet by Arthur Conan Doyle, St. Peter's Affair by Ellis Peters, Of One Blood by Pauline Hopkins, and The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. So I'm not going to give you really thoughts on those. You can go check my community post if you want like very brief thoughts, but I don't want to bloat up this weekly update. So I haven't had a chance to sit down and record. It's just been hectic around here, to say the least. So, but this week I have finished 4 things, and one of them was Storm Season, and edited by Robert Lynn Aspirin and Lynn Abbey, husband and wife duo. Excuse me, the fourth Thieves World anthology, fifth Thieves World book that I've read, having read Shadow Spawn and Dagger as well. Though Shadow Spawn. Dagger you can read before this. I would actually wait till after reading this, and maybe even after reading The Face of Chaos to read Shadow Spawn. But I found a chronology online, and they said you could read Shadow Spawn before Storm Season. And after having read that, that's not true. So don't listen to that chronology. Anyways, this is an enjoyable one. It's very much not a good place to start with Thieves World anymore. I'd say the first 3 you could easily start with. I would just recommend starting at the first one. And the second one's really easy to start with. The third one, a little less so, I feel like. The characters are kind of already established in the first 2 anthologies, but this one for sure, especially as there's a lot converging, there's a bigger plot unfolding, and especially it ends in a kind of a cliffhanger with the big themes on the horizon. So I'm sure you couldn't start with the 5th one either. So anyways, but they're still good. Sword and sorcery, or kind of close sometimes, heroic fantasy, short stories, very much an early experiment in shared world stuff that you'd mostly and largely get in like Dungeons and Dragons later in the 80s with like Dragonlance anthologies and Forgotten Realms stuff. And, those worlds being shared themselves, right, by several authors. So it was enjoyable, though. I also finished another Storm book, Storm Dragon, by James Wyatt. I'm hoping for December to finally go over I think there's 10 D&D settings that have novels for them, and I've read 9 of the 10, and now I only have to read a novel from Birthright. But finally read an Eberron novel. It's not bad. It's pretty typical heroic fantasy D&D fare. I don't really know much about the Eberron setting. This was, I think, kind of taking it from 3rd to 4th edition, but I don't know. The changes were really there. I don't really know the setting much, besides the fact that it's kind of more science leaning. That's where the Artificer class comes from. They have like pretty much railroads, trains in a sense, but there's magic powered. There's like robots that are pretty much the Warforged, right? So then you have airships are very common. You have airships in other D&D settings, but they're common here, it seems like. So anyways, Storm Dragon, no, that was interesting. One of the things I did finish actually was Unknown #1, the whole issue. This is for a little project. I have no clue when this project will see the light of day, if ever, for all I know. But it is fun to read the stories in Unknown. I actually read the first story in Unknown like more than a year and a half ago, and I enjoyed that one. But then I went through this last couple weeks and I read the short stories. And of the short stories, there's one by Manly Wade Wellman, which is easily the best one. It's actually pretty horrifying. Has a pretty terminal climax that's pretty brutal. Besides that, there's some that are in there that are interesting and fun, and some that are just kind of forgettable, but not really terrible, just kind of okay. So, anyways, we'll see though. But I'm not going to do a review for Unknown issue 1. Like I said, if this project comes to fruition, which the first iteration of it didn't a year and a half ago. But anyways, we'll see about this version of it. The last thing I finished actually was Youre All Alone by Fritz Leiber, which I had heard kind of reads like The Matrix, like a proto Matrix, and I can definitely see it. So if you're a fan of The Matrix, you might want to read You're All Alone. Definitely creepy. I know some people like to complain about the plot of Liber, but Liber is very much more on the mood and on the character in a sense, right? The plot is there, but like in some sense it's secondary, which is interesting actually, because I feel like when you read most old, this came out in 1950, when you read most old sci-fi stuff, it's the opposite. The character, the mood are not the key, it's the plot and whatever heck they can come up with. So maybe you disagree with me on that, but I just feel like the setting, the mood, the character here, the characters themselves are like, I would say Jane is much more interesting than Carr is, but still. So I enjoyed it a lot. It's not a favorite of Liber of mine, but I read a lot of Liber at this point, and I did enjoy it though. So if you want to read something that's kind of like The Matrix, came out in 1950, read You're All Alone. There's actually a few versions of it, and there's like four versions of it, which is ridiculous that there's so many versions of this one um, book, one novel. So the other one is called like The Sinful Ones, and it's, as far as I'm aware, a bit more sexual, or something like that. So the earliest version is not, came out in 1950s, so maybe it isn't surprising. So, but yeah. Anyways, take that as you will. But those are the four things I finished. The other things I'm in the middle of reading. I'm in the middle of The Night Parade, actually by Scott Cianson. This is a pretty dark Forgotten Realms novel. I was surprised. It's the fourth Harper's novel. I'm trying to go through the Harper's books now. I was a little over halfway reading what I kind of wanted to out of the Harper's, though I haven't still gotten to Finder's Bane, which I want to read. But besides that, the other ones are just kind of appendages, to the stuff I liked. So since I'm so far into it, though, I kind of want to finish the series. It's a 16-book series, so, but this one's a standalone about Myrmeen Law, sorry, the lady that rules the city of Arabelle and Cormyr, but it's like her kind of going back to her roots and trying to find her daughter in Calimport, Calimshan. It's very interesting. So it's pretty dark though, and it deals with a lot of weird creatures that you can kind of see on the cover here, and they are called the Night Parade collectively. So, anyways, I'm enjoying it. It's been a couple months since I read a Forgotten Realms novel, so nice to be back. I'm also reading, let's see, The Ocean of Tears, EverQuest novel. I don't have it with me right now, but it is by Stuart Wieck, I think, which is a White Wolf publisher, like tabletop role playing games guy. Passed away a few years ago, but I hear this is the best EverQuest novel. I actually haven't read it in a couple days, but it's not bad. So I am enjoying it. Not much to report there, but it's not bad. So I'm enjoying it actually, largely because it's before stuff. It's like before the EverQuest games really is when it seems to take place sometime in the past. Okay, where was I? There was someone at the door. I don't know if you heard the doorbell go off, but yeah, The Ocean of Tears is okay so far. I'm really not far into it at all. Follows a dark elf character as the main guy, and then there's some woman that is in the Combine army, pretty much. So, anyways, we also have The Exile Kiss by George Alec Effinger. I'm not quite halfway through this one. Not very long, like the first two novels in the Marie Dodron trilogy, I guess you could call it. I think it originally planned to be more books. I definitely know he was writing a fourth one when he passed away, which you can read like the excerpts from in like a collection that came out after his passing, called like Boudin Nights or whatever. But I'm really enjoying it. It's very different, change of pace from the first two books. First two are a little different from each other as well, so it's very interesting. It doesn't take place in the city as much. So, anyways, we also have King Solomon's Mines by H. Rider Haggard, the third Haggard book I've read. Surprised, I don't know why I was expecting it. I kind of expect to have speculative elements. Doesn't really. It's a Lost World novel, but it's pretty grounded in reality. And it's my least favorite Haggard book I've read. I'm not quite done with it, but I'm insanely close. So, yeah. Anyways, I also have been making my way through the Persephorus Reader. I've actually been doing this one for a couple weeks, so I think I not mentioned it, but it's an excerpt of like stories from Persephorus, which is actually the first place we get the Sleeping Beauty story as recognizable Sleeping Beauty. Haven't got to that one yet, but it's mostly dealing with Persephorus, who's like a pre-Arthur figure. It's from a very, very big French romance. It's like at least a million words long or something like that. I don't remember. It's really long. And you cannot find it unabridged in English. You can find like a very thick version of it that's like 800 to 1,000 pages, something like that in English. But then you get the same, I think, translator has like a reader, which is much more accessible, but it's only like 160 pages or something. That's what I'm reading. So it's interesting. I always like reading the old Arthurian. I prefer it when it's in English so I can just read it in English myself, right, in the Middle English or whatever. But because my old French is not good enough to read the old French. So, but it's interesting and it's good. And then another book, or a couple other books. Sorry, my notes are confusing me. One more I have mentioned on here before I have these over here. Eaters of the Dead by Michael Crichton. Mostly just because it's a mashup of Ibn Fadlan's The Land of Darkness and also Beowulf. And so I've read both of those. I've read Beowulf and Ibn Fadlan's like actual historical work. This is pretty much acting like it is the actual Ibn Fadlan's work, pretty much. Like it's acting like it's medieval manuscript, kind of in like a Gothic tradition, or you'll see it in some other literary areas too. But acting like it's an actual medieval manuscript that's been found, and this is like an academic work, really, but it's really just fiction. So I'm enjoying it. I'm not that far into it though. But it's pretty short. And then also, I read more this week of Britain After Rome by Robin Fleming. I've been reading this one for years, but it is interesting. And it's talking about like the rebirth of towns and communities and non-towns, as she describes it, at certain points. So very enlightening. I'm just afraid of how much I could remember. I do like it as a history book because it's more focused on material culture. It's very archaeologically focused, and I find generally, because I read a few books that are pretty much the same thing, right? It's Britain After Rome. It's the fall and rise. It's just funny, right? The rise and fall, or whatever, from 400 to 1070. And I read several books like this that would cover the same period, and you just think it'd be called like Anglo-Saxon England or the Anglo-Saxons or whatever. And they're almost all the same. Every history book is like the same, right? Because the history, all the people who write the history books are just copying the history books they read or whatever. I like that it's focused on the archaeological remains, right? It's very different. It reads very differently. I would like the idea if it was supplemented with like literary stuff, because it doesn't really include literature much at all, like records or anything. It's just pretty much material remains besides that. But it is still very informative. And I mean, I think archaeology and anthropology more broadly are very useful for giving you a sight into something that feels very different than all the other Anglo-Saxon like time period things that I've read, right? Because it is very different. You know what I mean? Like it's not the narrative so much; it's just what you find in the ground, and what you find in the ground is not everything. It's just a piece of the puzzle. And oftentimes it's a piece of puzzle that you do not get in the narratives or the histories or anything like that. So I'm enjoying it still, but I have like 160 pages left. Another book I've been reading that is more academic. I still have one chapter left. I haven't been going as quickly through it because I'm not a huge fan of the Lovecraft chapters, just to be honest. But I have one more chapter left. It's just a conclusion. It should be pretty easy and simple, and it's not very long. So maybe I'll finish this one this week. Weird Tales of Modernity. I do want to make a video on this. I don't know if I'm feeling it right now, though. Yeah. So anyways, I hope I am, but I'm not. Anyways, really right now. So another book I've been making pretty slow progress in. I'm on page 164, it says. So I'm not even halfway through the book. It's Lavend This by Robert Holdstock, a sequel to Mythical Wood, which I read 3 years ago. I'm enjoying this one a lot more. Very, very much fits this mood of like late October, early November for me. Well, I guess mid-November now, but very otherworldly, but kind of modern fantasy in a sense. It doesn't read anything like what people would think when I say modern fantasy, but it's interesting. I like it. It definitely hits that mood. It definitely hits the Celtic otherworldliness, I'd say, more than anything. It's a good one. I'm enjoying it. I'm excited to read further. So anyways, I think that's it. Looking at my notes, yeah, that looks like it pretty much. So anyways, thanks for joining for William's Leapings 107. Let me know what you guys have been reading past 3 weeks or past week or anything recently. Life is a little hectic right now. Anyways, so I'll catch you next time. Thanks for watching.